Somewhere in Alaska, a phone rings inside a police station. The man on the other end is calm, steady. He says he killed someone. He tells them where the body is. And then he hangs up. And here's the part nobody can explain. He calls back. Different agency, same story. Again and again. For more than 30 years, no one even knew Patrick Dearth was dead. And now the one man who knew won't stop telling them.
I'm Cole, and this is Midnight Files. November 1993, Fairbanks, Alaska, a city that sits almost at the top of the world, where winter swallows the daylight and the cold gets into everything. That's where Patrick Orville Dearth was living, 34 years old, 6'2", brown hair, brown eyes, an ordinary man with an ordinary life, until one day he simply wasn't there anymore. On November 22, 1993, that's the last day anyone can place him. And when he didn't turn up, didn't call, didn't come home, his family did what any family would do. They walked into the Fairbanks Police Department, and they reported him missing. And then, nothing. No sightings, no leads, no body, just a name in a file, and a family left holding a question with no answer. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. Patrick Dearth became one of those cases, the kind that sits in a drawer, growing colder with every winter that passes. 10 years, 20 years, 30. For more than 3 decades, the world moved on. But somewhere, out there, someone hadn't forgotten. Someone couldn't. January 22nd, 2025. The phone rings at the Alaska State Troopers. On the line is a voice. Someone who says they did something a very long time ago. They say they killed a person, Mere Fairbanks, back in 1993. And they don't stop there. They tell the troopers exactly where the body was left. Think about that for a second. A cold case, more than 30 years old. No pressure, no new evidence forcing anyone's hand. And out of nowhere, a stranger picks up a phone and confesses to a killing almost no one remembered, and then hands over a map to the grave. The case landed with the people built for exactly this moment, the Alaska Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Investigation Unit, and they wanted to move. But Alaska had other plans. Because in January, the spot the caller described was buried, snow on the ground, the sun barely clearing the horizon before it sank again. You can't search a frozen wilderness in the dark. So the investigators did the hardest thing an investigator can do when a break finally comes. They waited. They waited for the snow to melt. They waited for the light to come back, month after month, knowing that if the caller was telling the truth, a man's remains were sitting out there, right where he said. Spring came, and on May 8, 2025, they finally went in. Mile 47 of the Steese Highway, north of Fairbanks, out in the Chattanooga country, remote, quiet, the kind of place you'd pick if you never wanted something to be found. They made their way down a steep embankment, down into the brush, and there it was. A barrel. And inside that barrel, human remains. The caller had been telling the truth. The remains went to the Alaska State Medical Examiner's office, and 2 things came back. The first, an identity. After 32 years, the man in the barrel finally had his name again. Patrick Orville Dearth, the missing man, found. The second finding was colder. This was no accident, no disappearance. The medical examiner ruled it a homicide. Patrick Dearth had been murdered, and for 3 decades, no one had known. But the story doesn't end with the body. In a way, that's where it really begins. Because now the investigators had a question that gnawed at them. Who was the voice on the phone? And as they dug, they found something strange. That January call, it wasn't the only one. Investigators say the same person had reached out more than once, multiple anonymous tips, to different law enforcement agencies across Alaska. Each time, the same claim. Each time, taking responsibility for Dearth's death. Someone was confessing, over and over, to agency after agency, as if the weight of it couldn't stay buried any longer than the body had. So the troopers did what the caller maybe never expected. They traced it back. They followed the confessions to their source. And investigators say all of it led to one man, a 54-year-old from Michigan named Christopher Pops. According to the Alaska State Troopers, Pops and Patrick Dearth weren't strangers. They had worked together, back in Fairbanks, at an auto shop. And investigators alleged that one day in 1993, something between them went wrong. As the Department of Public Safety described it, there was an altercation at that auto shop, and it ended with Pops shooting Dearth. That's the allegation: a fight, a gun, and then a barrel, hauled out to a lonely stretch of highway and rolled down an embankment where it would sit, undisturbed, for more than 30 years. Now, this is the part that matters, and it matters a lot. Everything about how Patrick Dearth died is, at this stage, an allegation. It is what investigators believe. It is what they say the evidence, and those confessions, point to. But Christopher Pops has not been convicted of anything. Under the law, he is presumed innocent until a court says otherwise. Here is what is confirmed. On June 25, 2026, a Fairbanks grand jury indicted Christopher Pops on 2 counts of second-degree murder in the death of Patrick Dearth. A warrant went out the same day. And then, on July 16, 2026, more than 3,000 miles away, near Kalamazoo, Michigan, Michigan State Police arrested him. He was booked into the Kalamazoo County Jail, where, as of now, he sits, waiting to be sent back to Alaska to face the charge. Patrick's next of kin, his family, have finally been told. After 32 years of not knowing, they know. But there is one question the investigators still cannot answer, the biggest one. Why? Why would a man stay silent for 3 decades, build a life, move across the country, put an entire ocean of years between himself and a barrel in the Alaskan wilderness, and then, out of nowhere, start calling police stations to confess? What breaks in a person after 30 years of silence? What makes someone hand investigators the one thing they could never find on their own? The troopers have said it plainly. They don't know. They don't know what made him start talking. And maybe that's the part that stays with you. A man vanished in 1993. A barrel gave him back in 2025. And the only person who could explain the 32 years in between is the same person who, for reasons no one understands, finally decided he couldn't carry it alone anymore. The case is still open, the story isn't finished, and somewhere between a phone call and a courtroom, the answer to that one question, why now, is still out there.